Hey .NET developers, a new .NET project template just dropped in .NET 11, and it makes life as a web developer a bit better. And we're going to talk about it right here on what's new in .NET and C# with Isaac. Hey folks, Isaac here with another edition of What's New in .NET and C# with Isaac, where we go over all the cool things that are coming out in .NET and C#. At the time of this recording, we're in July of 2026, so we'll be talking about .NET 11 Preview 6, which just came out a few days ago. And for folks that may not be paying attention to like .NET's release cycle, so the new version of .NET, which is .NET 11, the new version of C#, C# 15, comes out in November of 2026. So we're going to be talking about a preview version. And basically what I want to show in this video is some new functionality that's come out in the latest version of .NET that will make the life of a web developer a bit better. But let's just set some ground rules as to like why we're doing this video. So if you're familiar with building .NET apps in the last few years, you're probably well aware of Blazor. There's two versions of Blazor. There's Blazor Server, which basically what happens is all of the HTML for DOM updates renders on the server, and then there's a communication mechanism between the browser and the server using SignalR that passes UI modifications or updates over that. And then you have Blazor WebAssembly, which all of the code or all the functionality that you're using to update the DOM runs in the browser. So you're still able to write like C# to change HTML elements and UI elements, except one is done on the server, one is done on the client side or on the browser. So if you've built in Blazor WebAssembly before, you are probably well aware of what happens when you're trying to do like an expensive task. So like you're trying to make an API call or generating a QR code or something like that, something that involves like a lot of CPU. So what will happen if you, like, for instance, you click a button and then you have to do those things, the UI will freeze. So you'll get, the little pointer finger and you won't be able to scroll. You won't be able to interact with the rest of the UI. And that's not a bug. That's just how Blazor WebAssembly works by default. So the newest version of .NET 11, so Preview 6, there's a new project template, and we're going to go over that, look at the docs in a second. The template is called Blazor Web Worker, and let's just talk why it exists, and we'll build something with it a little bit at the end. So when we build things with Blazor WebAssembly, your .NET code by default, it runs in the single UI thread of the browser. So the same thread that's handling clicks, it's for painting the DOM, scrolling, all those things. It basically is a similar constraint that we've had in JavaScript for a long time. So which means if you run something that's CPU heavy, like even if it's running async and it's not actually yielding, you block rendering. So that's why like the HTML or the web page looks like it's frozen. The page just locks up. So task.run doesn't save you here. You need not without real threading, because by default there's nowhere else for that work to actually run. It has to run in that one thread. So as I mentioned, this is something in JavaScript that's been going on a long time, and browser solved it a while ago with web workers. So web workers are basically background tasks that they have their own isolated environment, and you can talk to them via message passing back and forth. And you've probably seen this a lot if you've done a lot of JavaScript development, like for instance, like Chrome extensions do this a lot. If you're trying to kind of pass information and have a Chrome extension doing something in the background while you're interacting with a web page that has that extension enabled. So that's how JavaScript does it. So if you want to do that with Blazor, you have to use like a real web worker, and you're basically having to write like a lot of JavaScript interrupt and not in C#. And the whole idea of Blazor is to be able to like write C# and that code actually executes in some way that updates the HTML or the UI of that website, and it's all written in C#. So let's talk like a little bit of history of what we've been doing in .NET. So before like .NET 8 around, if you wanted to like code like a web worker, you had to, like I mentioned, you had to do a lot of JavaScript interrupts. So you had to wire a post message, which is the mechanism to handle message passing between the background thread, those worker threads, and the UI threads. So you'd have to handle basically the glue to spin that up. So the WASM runtime or the WebAssembly runtime, you had to run it inside the worker. You had to do manual serialization. People have been doing this for a while, right? And then .NET 8 comes out, and there's like a WASM-experimental workload that came out. So it gives you multi-threading in the WASM runtime, but it was still very DIY. So you basically had to do all of the plumbing for the worker and a lot of manual JavaScript. And then .NET 11 Preview 1 comes out, which came out a few months ago. So a new template was created called a web worker. So basically what it is it's a scaffold Razor project. And all that JavaScript glue that we've had to kind of write by hand or we've had to copy and paste from somewhere is written for you. And then a web worker client, so it uses the factory pattern when we get the ability to create those background methods just by adding a JS export attribute. So it's a huge improvement. So you're not having to write that glue code and over and over and over again. So now we're in Preview 6, and they rename that project to Blazor Web Worker. So now it kind of makes more sense because they say, okay, this is a Blazor stack thing. So it's not some standalone like WebAssembly thing. And more importantly, they added the two features people kept asking for, which were, I believe, invoke void async. So that's fire and forget calls. So maybe if you're throwing something out there and you don't need it to return something, so that already exists if you have like, so that matches kind of like the similar shape they have like IJS runtime. And then the other thing, which is great for like timeout support and cancellation, there's an actual cancellation token that you can pass into these things. So the stuck worker, like if it is running forever and you don't want it to run forever for whatever particular reason, you can have a cancellation token do that. So I wanted to show you what this actually looks like in practice. So I'm going to hop over, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to show you a couple of web pages, and then we're going to get right into some code. So this is the docs for .NET 11 Preview 6, and as you can see, it talks about this Blazor Web Worker template. Talked about those things a bit earlier about the invoke async and the cancellation token. And if you want to learn more about this, you can click on this link here, and that'll take you here, which talks about like ASP.NET Core Blazor with .NET on web workers, and it talks about the web worker pattern and what we've done in the past, and it shows you like some little sample code. And this doesn't work for Blazor too. Like if you want to have web workers and connect to them from .NET in general, you have the ability to do that. Like this is an example of using a React app that uses web workers. So I highly recommend checking out that stuff. There's some cool things in there to learn about why this is important and how you can implement it for other workloads other than just Blazor. So this is just a little sample project that I put together. So the idea is it just returns a list of users and displays it on the UI. So if I go to the code behind for this Razor component here, as you can see, I'm just getting users, and then I have a loop, and then I'm sleeping 5 seconds. So this is just to simulate what would happen if you had like a long running thread. So if I was to run this, and you saw it in the video that was over here a bit earlier, is that basically the UI thread is completely locked. Like I have a little finger pointer here, and I can't really do anything. So what I want to be able to do is I want to use this new web worker that I added to this project that will allow me to have those long running tasks. So what I did here is I created like a new web worker project, and inside of here there's a couple of classes that we should take a look at. So the first one is the web worker client glue that I talked about a little bit earlier. So what this does is it wires up some basically that JavaScript glue that I was talking about earlier, and also just basically sets up all of the invoking mechanism between the browser and the web worker APIs. So this code is basically pretty boilerplate, but the real code here is this worker method. So let me just take that out. And basically what I'm doing is a similar thing that I was doing earlier. So I'm simulating the idea of like a long running task. So basically, it's, my get users method, it's a loop. So it's going to loop over 5 times and write out to the console. And then I'm going to basically create a couple of user objects and then return that serialized. So when I go back out here, basically just list those out. So let's actually wire this up firstly. So right now I have to kind of rewrite a bunch of this code, and lucky enough I have it all copy pasted, and then we'll just go over what this change actually is. So as you can see here, what I did is I added a supported OS platform attribute for browser to this particular Razor component. And then I have some on-render async, which basically says, okay, the first time the page renders, I want to create an instance of that worker class that we showed earlier. And we're going to wire that up back on the home Razor side in a second. Then I have this call worker method that basically checks if the worker is null. And if it isn't null, we fire off an invoke async to that worker client that we showed earlier, and then we serialize that, and then we come back. So when I go back over here, nothing changes on the Razor component side, like the Razor side. So I'm still doing that on click, I'm doing that call worker, and I'm listing out the list of users. So if I just run this, It's going to pop open the browser in a different window. I'm going to drag this over here. And this is what I want to show that's really, really important. So I can go into the developer tools here and let's just pin this. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, I have my UI, and on the right-hand side, I have developer tools. So what I do here is if I go into the console and I click call worker, I get this message saying waiting for users. And that waiting for users, if you actually go back to my C# class here, it's actually, whoops, wrong one. So it's doing that waiting for users, and then it's sleeping for 5 seconds. So as you can see here, like this is actually in the console log of the browser, so the developer tool. So when you say console.writeLine with this new method, it actually writes out to the browser. And then finally, after it runs a few times, it's going to actually show our data, which I think is really cool. And this is just a quick demo, basically showcasing what it actually does. And, I think from here, I think the thing that matters most is the fact that we now have an ability to have long-running tasks and completely in Blazor. Yes, there's some JavaScript glue that the new project template provides, but you don't need to make many modifications to that unless you need to for some particular reason. The big thing is that when you have that client work that you actually has the long running tasks, you modify that the way you want using some of the information that's in the documents that I showed earlier. And from there, it just magically works. Well, not magically, but you know what I mean. And I think it's really, really cool. So this is just another great thing that's coming out in the .NET ecosystem. And this is available. So the idea was introduced in .NET 11 Preview 1, but the new template has been renamed and reconfigured with a couple of additional goodness in Preview 6, which is in July of 2026. And that's it for me. If you like this video, don't like my channel, subscribe to it, share this video with your friends, and uh, I'm looking forward to some of the cool things that are coming out in .NET 11 as we march on to November. And so that's it for me today. I hope you enjoy and have a good day. Take care.